Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the PM Learning Series, a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and product practitioners share about their product building journey to inspire current and aspiring product builders like you to level up your product game and product career. My name is Shavi. I'm the host for the show, as well as the product lead at LinkedIn. As many of you knew that last year, we kick off a very special series featuring product leaders from leading generative AI companies to explore the challenges and opportunities of this very transformative technology and really gain insights from those leading the charge in generative AI product development. So, a couple housekeeping before we start and introduce today's very special speakers from Tome. Housekeeping. So every Wednesday, we send out a recap of key takeaways from today's discussion. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, which you can find either in the event details tab. There's a link to subscribe, or you can navigate to my profile. In the feature section of my profile, you'll be able to see a link to subscribe. And if you're fast enough on your phone, you can maybe scan me using this QR code. But those are the easier way to navigate and find the link through my profile. And also, shameless plug, earlier this year, we launched a book based on a series of interviews and research from various talks to industry leaders. That we launched a book about building product with generative AI. You can find it available on Amazon in multiple locations, ebook and paperback. Check us out and let us know what you think. So with that, let me welcome today's speaker. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So Sam is the head of product at Tome, which we'll dive in quite a bit. It's quite an exciting product. It's reimagining how presentations can be done. I think I heard about Tome actually more than a year ago. So it's really excited to talk to someone who's actually working there and knowing the inside out and what it's like to build a generative AI product. Before then, Sam has lead product teams at Open Door and a couple other companies. You were a former consultant in Bain. I think towards the later half of the talk, we can talk a little bit about your personal reflection on, joining different startup, working as an engineer, as an investment associate, as a consultant, and now building product at a high, like a startup in generative AI space. I think it's quite fascinating to both know the business, the product craft, but also your personal journey and reflection. So thank you so much again, Tom, for joining us today. It's really an honor to have you.
Really excited to be here.
Awesome. Without further ado, why don't we take a demo and look at what Tome is about and what it's like?
Yeah. So there's a lot that you can do with Tome. Tome is a tool for telling stories for work, and stories can take many different shapes. They can be presentations, they can be websites, they can be one-pagers, they can be blog posts. You can do all of that with Tome. What I'm going to demo is one workflow, which is meant to help a user create a presentation from scratch with Tome's AI. And so what you'll see here is a user deciding to, they have an idea. They type in a prompt, and then they'll click generate. And Tome will help them structure that idea. So it'll come up with an outline for them. They can adjust that outline, add to it, remove from it, reorder it. And then Tome will walk you through each page in that outline and help you select what is the best layout, what are the best images, the best text to help you make your point. A huge part of Tome is that opinionated design is built into the product. It's not just about the AI, it's about the aesthetic and the content and the story all fitting together really well. And so we're adding new content types regularly, and we're just trying to help people tell more stories and better stories for their work.
This is very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. I love the actually you're giving a lot of control, right? Like nudging people to choose different type of style, how to re-rank the order of like the outline, different layouts. And I like what you said about, incorporating sort of the design best practice. Because sometimes it takes a lot of energy to look at like beautiful slides and find inspiration. So this is definitely, I think, solving a real problem of someone who needs to create a lot of presentation. Now, with that, I would like to. I know, Sian, you only joined Tom for about 10 months based on your LinkedIn profile. You could tell me maybe you didn't keep it up to date, but curious, Tom, have been in the business for a couple years now. Like, can you speak to maybe the original story and some of the motivation of like what inspired the creation of the product, what gaps in the market, what jobs to be done that the product was created to fill, and maybe how has it been involved over the past couple of years?
Yeah. So let's talk about the origin of the company. It came from a broad set of pain points around the frustration people had telling stories and, in particular, creating presentations for work. One part of that was just the process of creating tended to be really hard for most people, that you had to learn all the nuances of the software. There might be hundreds of different features in a presentation maker. The second point was that the output was often unsatisfying. The format was constraining. I mean, the format of slides comes from physical slides invented decades ago, and it's survived in many ways that really limit us. Slides don't tend to work very well on mobile. People go to all of this effort to create kind of beautiful visuals that will render on desktop. But the fact is, nearly half of viewing is occurring on mobile, and you're just losing all of that with that audience. Every page is a fixed length, whereas maybe you have different amounts of content that you want to put per page. And if you kind of zoom out, I think a lot of users, they know what beautiful communication looks like, but they don't know how to achieve that. And the tools weren't really helping them achieve that. And so we saw a couple of opportunities. One was to build a more flexible format. The second was to build a design system associated with that format that would ensure your output looked beautiful, even if you're not a designer. And then third, the opportunity to have AI that would co-create with you. AI that would understand your intent, also understand some principles around design and storytelling, and build you something that would be effective in whatever type of story you were setting out to tell.
That's a great story to start. So I sort of alluded to it earlier in my question. I'd like to know a little bit about Gen AI company develop super fast, right? Like, iterate, GPT right now. We're maybe seeing GPT-5 this year. I can't promise, but like, we're seeing a lot of different faces. What would you say are some of the key milestones or transitional phases for Tom as you thinking about this AI presentation market? How would you classify them?
I'd break it up into three phases. So the first phase was 2022 into the spring of 2023. And that was really about proving that there was actually demand for a better presentation tool. So in this phase, most of our work was, and this includes building the new format, building the first parts of the AI, and getting a free product out there with the basics of this novel presentation format and AI co-creation feature suite. And what we saw in this first phase was that there was a lot of demand who were excited to try out a new tool. People were not locked in to their existing tools. And so by the time we got to the spring of 2023, we had over 10 million users, and it was very clear to us that the pain points that we had personally felt were widespread, and people were willing to come in and test out a new tool. The second phase was from the summer of 2023 into the fall. And this was really about understanding who are our power users and what mattered to them. We had a lot of people who had signed up, and they had vastly differing subsequent experiences in the product. And so we wanted to see what were we building that was actually helping people to go deeper, make more valuable tomes, actually start to to win over customers or colleagues or investors or any of the other types of audiences that we use presentations for. And why were some people not having that level of success? One of the really important parts of this second phase was monetization. It was particularly important for us to put a paid plan in place because it allowed us to see really kind of who is voting with their wallet, who is saying this product is so valuable to me that I'm willing to pay for it. And I'd say in this phase, we discovered a couple things that we were right about, that the flexible format really mattered to a lot of people, that a system that made it hard to make bad looking pages was also really valuable. But there was also some things that we were wrong about. We had initially thought that a mobile creation experience would be really important. And it turns out that people really cared about mobile viewing, but for real work, most people wanted to be on their desktop with the power that you get on a desktop, and they wanted to create from there. And so that was one product strategy where we had to say, okay, actually our creation is occurring on desktop, and we need to build for that. Another thing that we learned in this phase was that it's hard to communicate the boundaries of what AI can and cannot do. I think of this as if you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to ask for a glass of milk. It's a classic children's book. If you give users a free text input, and for some AI features they're very bounded features, but you have to get that free text input, all of a sudden from a user's perspective, it's like the world is my oyster. Maybe there's some artificial general intelligence behind this thing, and I can type in whatever I want. And we kind of realized we have to go down this path. It's not going to work to tell users, oh, we can only do X and Y, but we can't do Z. And so that was both kind of intimidating, but also really inspiring for us. The third phase, which I'd say started towards the end of 2023 and extends through today, has been about really focusing in on our power users and using that to catalyze team expansion. So I think in the earlier phases of the company, individuals were coming to us and trying Tome for one or two presentations that they were making themselves. And as we've built more power into the product for those users, we've also started to unlock ways for them to take that to their team. And there's a whole level of productivity that comes from using a tool with your team as opposed to using it by yourself. I'd say the other thing that's really distinguishing this last phase is differentiating from, wow, this AI is novel, and I'm going to send this presentation I made to my friends or my family because I've never seen AI kind of put something like this together, to a much higher bar, which is this presentation that I co-created with AI is good enough for my boss or for this prospective customer. And for us to build a really big business, we have to hit that latter one. And so we've really kind of focused in on what are the indications, not of entertainment or interest, but what are the indications that someone is doing real work and that we have served them well or not in that capacity.
I love that. There's so much to unpack here. First of all, my first reaction was AI product development just fasten the iteration speed so much more, right? Like you talk about literally 3 phase in like 10 months, 12 months period. So I think that's faster than a lot of traditional software development. But also the moment you mentioned about what I call the perception gap versus reality, like the perception versus reality gap, right? Like a lot of this Gen AI application, especially when it first came out, I think a lot of people wanted to try, was it Lanza or like the avatar company was the big one, right? Like that everybody did like a AI avatar, and then it kind of like just there's so many more, like maybe 100 more now of application. So there's what you said, I think like setting the boundary, managing the expectation of what the AI tool can do in a very intuitive, contextual way, but then also actually delivering real needs beyond the initial magical moment. So, my next set of questions is around like some of the biggest challenge that you face while building the product. Was this monetization or be able to better communicate what the tool can or cannot do to manage the expectation, but still delivering like a real good, delightful experience, part of the challenges? If so, we'd love to hear like how you overcame them. Are there other type of challenges that were top of mind that's keeping you up at day, and like how did the team, like how you orient the team to overcome those?
There's
Keeping
two
it real,
core
Sam. It's part of our the magic of our show is to have like really honest and thoughtful product conversation. So I appreciate you you sharing your insights.
Yeah, there's two really core product challenges at Tome that I think will be enduring product challenges, and I think we'll make progress against them, but I think they'll always be there. The first is a presentation combines many different types of output, or in the parlance of AI, many different modalities. A great presentation has text, it has images, it has charts, it has drawings, and so ultimately we want to get great at all of those things. But even before that, there's a question of what do we prioritize and why? And we can zoom in from those things like text or images and say, what types of images, or what pieces of content are resonating with users or not. We can also zoom out and we can talk about things like the structure of a tome or the overall design aesthetic. And we have to be great at all of those things. And ultimately, like the AI has to understand all of those things, even though they're both very different in terms of granularity. And under the hood, technically, they require very different things. Image models, the best in class image models tend to be different than the best in class text models. And there's not really a lot of models out there yet for things like charts or drawings or tables. The second challenge is, so the first challenge is very AI related. I'd say the second challenge is less AI related and more just classical product management, which is making smart decisions about a really, really long list of user requests. And it's a kind of classic long tail problem where if we look at other incumbent tools for making presentations, they're really, really dense with features, with knobs and buttons and controls. And there's small populations of users that care a lot about each of those knobs. The things that most users care about, we've already built most of those things, but it's the long tail of those smaller things that we get a ton of feedback on. And there's two kind of sub challenges here. One is we don't have the resources or the time as a startup to go build all of those. So we have to choose wisely. What do we build? What's going to actually resonate with half of our user base, not just a handful of users who happen to be really vocal. And then the second part is, how do we avoid just being an overfilled, feature-rich product? Because that's part of what we're fighting against. We want a simple product that is still powerful. And it's easy to build a powerful product that just has, way too many knobs and buttons. The challenge there is getting the power while still maintaining the simplicity.
I love that. I think it's ultimately, like you said, the ultimate PM challenge to be able to find that balance and being able to prioritize the right set of features to focus first, balancing a lot of different factors. I think that's a natural segue actually to my next set of question around, how do you identify who are the key users? You mentioned about power users in phase 2 and phase 3 that you're trying to double down on. How do they come to find Tome? And then how do you incorporate their feedback in sort of your decision making of that long tail list of things that you could build to being really able to have conviction over these are the 5 that we're gonna, spend the money to do first?
It's a great question, and I think identifying who are your target users is one of the most important things for an early stage startup. Oftentimes you get started building for yourself, and then you discover there's someone who's different from you that actually benefits even more. For us, we are very focused on founders, salespeople, and marketers. These are all user types that have a particularly high bar for their work stories. so we know that when they go out and they share a tome, it's going to be really good. Moreover, their stories are often directly related to winning revenue. And so I think that ties into why they care so much about their presentations. There's a couple of ways that we identified these types of users as the ones to focus on. Some of it was kind of analytical, looking at how deep did they make it into the product, how many days did they come back, how many tomes did they create, how many tomes did they share. But a bigger thing was just looking at who was giving us the richest feedback. And what we saw was that these were the types of users who were really pushing our own thinking and telling us things that even as, we're all power users of our own product at Tome, but they were telling us things that even we hadn't noticed. And that made us kind of sit up and pay attention and say, like, we really need to focus on serving these user types.
Were there some specific feedbacks or processes that you incorporate to be able to better what's that term that I'm looking for? Signal from noises. How do you increase that ratio of knowing these are real things and these are 100 other things that, we could be doing. Do you have a specific example or processes you could share maybe?
I don't think there's any silver bullet. It's a hard question. I think a lot about, I don't think it's actually something Henry Ford said, but everyone likes to come up with this fake quote of, if I gave people what they wanted, I would have given them a faster horse, but instead I built a car. And so I think part of what building great products is about listening really closely to what users are asking, and maybe not just literally listening, but actually watching them use your product, because the way people will talk about their experience can be very different than what they actually did. And so really understanding what they're trying to do, and then what is the root cause of the pain that they're feeling, and what is the best solution for that? Because it might not be the thing that they suggest, or it might not be the most obvious thing that you would think of if you only think about it for a little bit. I think we see this a lot with AI, where sometimes people are asking, hey, here's an image that is that I really didn't like. You gave me an image of a person, and that person, they didn't look right. They were obviously AI created. Their eyes looked weird. Their fingers had, their hands had 6 fingers. And so your instinct is, well, let's go fix those things, right? Let's fix how we render faces, or let's fix how we render hands. But if you take a step back, you might say, well, did that user really need an image on that page? Maybe we should tell our AI, for that topic, show them something other than an image, show them a chart, show them a table. And don't just rush to the conclusion that, we have to treat the most obvious symptoms, which are the 6 fingers on the hand type of problem.
I like that, sort of also reframing the problem, the different angles to look at, how you would solve that problem versus fixing 6 fingers on a hand through AI. I think it's a very, very hard engineering AI problem, probably. Earlier in the talk, you mentioned about, even in phase 1, they were over, if I heard it right, over 10 million users that were already using Tome.
Yep.
Can you share a little bit about what were some of the growth strategies that you guys were implementing to kind of scale the product, get more users to use it? What's been working?
First, I think it's about picking a pain point that is broad and deep. I think there's kind of no amount of growth tactics or strategy that is going to overcome solving a problem that not that many people feel acutely. Second is building a product that is so good that people will talk about it with their friends and colleagues. And I think there's a step change around the look and feel of a product here, where 9 out of 10 products that I use, I'm not excited to talk about, but the one that passes that bar, I'm actually really excited to talk about. And we love to talk about network effects as product managers, but I think word of mouth is powerful and underrated. And it doesn't always mean there's network effects. It doesn't always mean there's virality. Or virality is a complex thing, but a lot of growth just comes from people saying, "Hey, I use this tool, and I see what you're using, and I know something that's better." Um, I think in terms of the more tactical things, we've made it very easy to try Tome. You can try it for free. The sign up flow is really fast, and we get you to what we hope is an aha moment. That was what I demoed earlier, where you type in a prompt and literally within a couple of seconds, you can have a multi-page, multimodal presentation. We get you to that aha moment really quickly. Stories are an inherently cross-user experience. There's a creator and there's a viewer. And so another growth tactic has been, well, make it easy for viewers to become creators. But there's limits to that. For a viewer to want to become a creator, they really have to like what they're viewing. So I think, it's not all about just, oh, let's put a big button out there that says, sign up for Tome when you're viewing a Tome. That actually might impair your viewing experience. The last thing that I'd mention is that there's a lot of people out there their pain point isn't so much around the format or the tool as they would think about it, but it's actually on the content or the substance, that they might need to go create a marketing pitch or a fundraising presentation. They're like, how do I go create a good one of these? What I'm looking for, what I'm typing into Google is not, better presentation tool. It's how do I make a marketing pitch? And templates, I think, are a great strategy for these types of users, where they won't discover Tome because it's a new tool. They'll discover Tome because we have a template for a marketing pitch that resonates with them. And they will incidentally learn the tool, and hopefully we'll retain them for the next presentation they have to make after that.
Absolutely. I love those 3 lessons. Basically, you have to solve a real problem, solve it in a delightful way with like a good, simple product that people are proud to basically share and feel like, hey, I use this great product. That's probably more important before you actually grow the product, right? Like, I love the aha moment. I reference it. I know when I reach out to you, I mentioned that in the book, we talk about how to get people to the aha moment faster before you even need to use it, like using a video or using a demo on the website is actually the first layer of a shallow aha moment, but that would hook you to get you interested to try out. And then I love the sort of focus on the job to be done, like the use cases, right? Like, people don't look for, what is it, that Harvard Business School quote? Don't look for a quarter inch. Don't for like a drill, but they look for the hole in the wall to be able to hang, whatever that they need to do. So they're looking for, how can I create a marketing presentation or a proposal for my client, not necessarily a new presentation tool. So I love the focus on that. With the time remaining, we're halfway through. I wanted to ask you again another hot take. I couldn't stop thinking about this one, because this one and the next one actually both are pretty important question. We know that there are a lot of Gen AI companies and existing tech companies adopting Gen AI capabilities, right? In the presentation space, I think Gamma was another sort of outcomer, latest startup that's focusing on this space. I know that Microsoft, PowerPoint slide try to incorporate some level of Copilot, Google Slide, Figma, Canva has like a Magic Studio. All of them are doing something similar, not quite completely the same, but how do you think about, for the next phase of Tome's growth, like how to stand out in this very crowded space with some players arguably quite dominant, right? Like Google Slides and Microsoft presentation, they have the distribution, like a lot of people are already using them daily. How do you differentiate and stand out?
Yeah, I think we stand out through a better format and a more powerful and flexible AI to co-create in that format with you. I am a believer that only the paranoid survive. So I think a lot about the competition, but I think about the competition in different ways depending on who it is. When it comes to other startups, I watch them very closely to understand two things. What are they building that is different than we're building, and why? And the second part is really hard, but I think really important. Even if a product seems similar across two companies, they may be serving different user bases. And so if you assume, oh, they're doing something, we should be doing it too, well, maybe your users don't actually care as much about it. So I try to think about that. And then I also look for their velocity. How quickly are they shipping features and at what quality? And I want Tome to be the fastest development team in the world. So anytime I see an indication that a competitor or even an adjacent product company is moving faster than us, I think that's a great occasion for us, for our team to get fired up and try to move faster. When it comes to the incumbents in the space, kind of like what you said, I think a lot about distribution and that being the thing that I'm watching. And so I'm looking for what are they doing that might make it harder for their users to leave, even if those users are unhappy. I think this has a lot to do with product bundling, pricing and packaging, even file formats. There are hundreds of millions, maybe over 1 billion users of the biggest incumbents in the presentation space, Microsoft and Google. And many of those users have deeply negative experiences with those tools. Many times those negative experiences go back many years, multiple decades. And so those users are very eager to try something new. And we see that in very large organic signups to Tome. People are just desperate for a tool that will allow them to create faster and better. And I don't think the introduction of AI features by these incumbents is going to dramatically change this desire to find an alternative tool, because it's not a functional need here. It's almost more of an emotional one that users are searching for a new tool and ultimately finding Tome.
Absolutely. I think the next question is sort of tangentially related to that as well, which you also mentioned about besides velocity is like how, what are some of the incumbents keeping people, right, through bundling, go to market, pricing, all that stuff. What right now, the hottest question I think a VC would ask any startup is like, what are your moats? How do you defend yourself to sustain in the business for the long term? What's your take on this for Tome?
The first part of our moat comes from the data that we collect, the user data that we collect. And primarily what I'm thinking about is the prompts that users are putting in. The tricky thing is being able to say what output is good or bad. When someone asks for a presentation about a self-driving car, what do they really want to see when they get that back? And so I think the most sophisticated part of our data is not actually what did the user type in, but it's the other data that we have mapped back to that to say, what does good look like? And this is about collecting and synthesizing signals around things like, what did the user edit? How did they edit it? And did they ultimately share it? The second part of the moat, I think, is our format. So creating a Tome is not like creating a PowerPoint or a Google slide. In some ways, it's more restrictive. You can't put content wherever you want it. You can only put it in places where it's going to look good. In some ways, it's more flexible. The pages grow to accommodate kind of the amount of space that your story needs on that page. It's very opinionated when it comes to design. You don't get a blank white page to start in Tome. You literally get a blank black page with white text. And so people immediately know when they land in Tome, wow, this feels different. Like the color choices are different. And you might be thinking, okay, like color choices, that's not very hard to copy from a technical point of view. But I think that the deeper thing when it comes to the moat from the format is that the incumbent players have hundreds of millions of legacy users with legacy files that they have to serve on a pretty precise technical format. It's very hard for them to innovate on format. And for Tome, we have a format that we think is inherently better that we don't think those incumbents can thus introduce to their users. I think the last part of kind of defensibility or moat is the AI that we've built that is highly focused on storytelling for work. And really what that means is it's good at being multimodal and it's good at being persuasive. So it's an expert in kind of communication, design, and editorial principles. And it has deep understanding of a wide variety of content types, not just text and images. It also has things like charts and diagrams and tables, and even more abstract concepts like what is the layout of a page or what is the structure of a presentation overall. And there's a proprietary language, something kind of like JSON, but that we've built from the ground up that our models use to express themselves. And that allows them to be both efficient and powerful.
I love that. So, speaking of which, of defensibility and moats, what would you envision to be the future presentation with AI? Let's say maybe 2, 3 years, since this is going so fast, maybe even that is hard to predict. But what role do you hope to see Tome play in that AI enhanced, presentation maker future?
One trend that I think is already happening is that we are moving away from hole-in-one attempts with AI towards true co-creation. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of the earliest Gen AI apps tried to go from the first step in a process all the way to the last step. You'd ask the user for some really basic input, and then you'd give them an entire presentation back. And for some users, this was great. The presentation they got back was really what they wanted, and that's truly magical. But for most users, it wasn't actually that close to what you wanted, or it was a little bit different, but we had kind of lost you along the way. And I think instead we're moving towards a design paradigm where we go step by step with AI, and the AI never loses you because you kind of move towards it incrementally. You can still go really quickly because the AI can do the hard work, but as a user, you're refining your own thinking with the AI at each step. And so by the time you get to the end, it's not like a 1 in 10 chance that you got the thing you wanted. It's like a 99% chance that the final output is what you wanted. The second thing I'm really excited about is AI that has good taste. I think this is aesthetic. For example, what does a great layout look like? I think it's content. I think it's understanding your audience. I think a lot of us have intuition and strong opinion about how do I tell the story for my colleague? How would I tell the story if I was listening to it? We know how to do that, but then we need help when we're presenting to someone that we don't understand that well. I've got to go present this to an engineer. I've got to go present this to an investor. And I think that's a place that AI can be really helpful. It's kind of a broader definition of taste, but I see so much demand for that. The last thing I'm excited about is for AI to understand users' proprietary data. So I think about if you're a sales rep and you want to create a pitch deck for a prospect, AI should understand all the info you have on that prospect that's probably already in your CRM. You should be able to just type in that prospect's name, and the AI, kind of like in the way that a good colleague would go do their research, the AI will go do their research.
I love that. I think I resonated very strongly with the first 2 points, like the co-creation, because when we were writing the book, for example, we used AI to kind of help us brainstorm, and then we kind of used it to research. Not very good at research at the time because it didn't plug in with the internet yet, and then it evolved as the process progressed. But like you said, like it's not one prompt and done. It's hundreds of prompts sometimes to produce something you like, tweaking minimum. I see that GPT-4, for example, starting to give you nudges at the end and say, like, is this what you want? Like, how would you want to change it? So I definitely want to push the envelope on that front. And I love the good taste. I interpret it more as like tailoring the message, to different target audiences, right? Sometimes as a product manager, to be quite frank, that's something that's quite hard to do, because in one moment you could be flying high at like 30,000, feet, giving exec an update on some project. And then the next moment your engineer is asking you little bugs or little things. And sometimes I find it really hard to context switch, especially if it's the other way around. It's harder, right? You tend to give like more details to the exec, and they're like, no, over communicating in an unnecessary way. So if AI could like help basically spin off different messagings based on the level of audience understanding, I think that's a really neat, that's a feature that I would love to see. We are coming almost up to time, so I do want to just throw sort of a personal question to you, since we've been talking about business this whole time. And during an intro, I mentioned a little bit about sort of the diverse range of experience you seem to have before you joined this role. Reflecting back maybe the past year, what were some of the most pivotal moments for you in this sort of AI on race almost, right? Like as you're seeing, like looking at different people's velocity, different development, different most excitement part. What's the hardest part? Like, what did you learn that wasn't obvious to you? Any advice for people who are aspire to be in a role like yours? Like what any general reflection and parting advice you would give to the community?
Yeah. So two things that were pretty new to me. One was learning to work forwards. Working backwards, I think, is this famous principle, came out of Amazon, and what it really means is what's the user pain point, and then we'll figure out kind of like from that we'll work backwards to what could a solution look like. And it's very user centric, and I think for a lot of technology, it's a really great approach. I think it can also be very fraught to work forwards from kind of what are the pure technological opportunities we have, and from those, what can we do for users? But when it comes to generative AI, that pure technological substrate from the foundation models is advancing so rapidly that I think it actually oftentimes makes sense to say, what's changed about these models over the past few months? And based on that, what else could we do for users, and kind of work forwards from the pure technological side. And the corollary to that is, I think with generative AI, at least for creative applications, there has to be a fair amount of prototyping and getting a prototype in your hands to see what feels good and what feels clunky, and really only defining a spec after you've done some prototyping. And I think in slower moving areas, or kind of more well understood areas, a lot of the time you really want to write the spec first, and then don't start writing any code until that spec is totally fleshed out. But I think a more flexible approach for AI products is really beneficial.
Do you usually we get this question a lot from our community around resources that they can really dive into this space? For someone, let's say if they don't have technical background, just like a PM with product sense, what are some practical advice or resources that you think people should, get their hands dirty, like you said, like the prototyping aspect, to really get to know this technology more, especially if they are looking for jobs in that domain where their current job do not allow them, or maybe they were laid off and so they have some more free time to explore. What are some best places to learn more about the technology without being technical?
I think using as many AI products as you can and kind of writing out your impressions of them is really helpful. I don't think anything really compares with just using products to develop product thinking. There's a couple newsletters that I subscribe to related to AI, or related to tech in general, that I think are helpful for strategic thinking. So I read Ben Thompson's blog pretty religiously. Jack Clark has a blog on AI that I like. But the things I read, the things I watch, I think all of that pales in comparison to just trying out products and being rigorous about how you experience that product.
Yeah, I love playing around with different type of tech, and maybe the homework for everyone who's listening to today is just to play with Tome. Right, it's free to play, free to start, and maybe send Sam some feedback if they're becoming part of the power user group. In terms of anything to make the product better. But thank you so much again, Sam, for joining us today. It was really honored to have you here. Sharing this your deep insight into building the product, how you're thinking through prioritization, who are the power users, the competitive landscape, and how to build moats, and a lot of the good insights into how to get hands-on experience. So really appreciate you being here today. Again, for folks who wanted to hear a recap of today's conversation, make sure you go to either my profile or directly in the event details tab. You'll see a link to subscribe to our newsletter. Next Wednesday, we'll send out a recap of key takeaways from today's conversation. And if you want to dive deeper, you can also check out our book, Reimagined, on Amazon. So thank you so much again, folks, for joining us today. And Sam, for joining us. I'll see you in future PM Learning series. And thanks to have you, having you join the show.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me.